Hey guys, what's up? Jubitaz back with a new video, where today we're going to tackle yet again another topic that keeps up with the themes of my channel and the more recent videos I've been putting up regarding the duality of the Shinobi world. One video in particular that I wanted to revisit is called "Did Naruto Really Achieve Peace?" video, and now it seems like the general gist of the comments was divided amongst these two opinions. The first was that Naruto did the best that he could with a broken system and that true peace could never be achieved. And the second was that Naruto didn't achieve true peace, that he just became the next in line for the same Shinobi system, that he maintained and served the status quo and just swept all of the crimes of the Leaf's past under the rug. So today, I wanted to represent the broad sentiment of the responses from you guys, look at how Naruto dealt with the hatred and flaws of the Shinobi system, some of his reigning actions as Hokage, and then propose some ideas about how Naruto could improve or fix the Shinobi system. And of course, you know the drill, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and other than that, let's get to it. So I wanted to address the first party's argument first, that Naruto may have not achieved absolute peace, but he did as good a job as one could in the Shinobi world, which is a fair argument to make. One thing about Naruto is that he was not only an idealist, but more importantly, he was empathetic and could relate to the pain of others, even the pain of his enemies like Nagato or Obito. He had similar morals to Yahiko, but Naruto had the power that Yahiko lacked, so he could enforce his ideals and not just get taken advantage of because of them. Naruto was similar to Hashirama in that sense, who was considered by most to be the perfect shinobi. So a lot of the ninja that met Naruto throughout his journey believed that he'd be the one to change the hateful and violent or exploitative nature of the shinobi system. And after the Fourth Great Ninja War, as far as the narrative was concerned, Naruto had achieved his goal of uniting all shinobi like the Sage of the Six Paths. Now there were obviously some skirmishes and minor conflicts or incidents that took place post the war according to the novels. I won't dive into them here, you should check out my previously mentioned Naruto video if you want the details, but essentially, Naruto didn't necessarily resolve all of the issues of mankind after the war, and frankly, it's an unreasonable expectation to set for him. It is an unachievable goal. Naruto did usher in peace between the great nations and the world in a broader sense, even if he didn't enforce that onto every individual. And as long as Naruto and Sasuke were present, they could maintain that peace with their six paths good cop bad cop routine. The tailed beasts were also no longer bound by the warmongering rules of the shinobi system, all thanks to Naruto. I don't want to belittle the achievements that Naruto did succeed in. He was considered the savior of the world after the Fourth War for a reason. It was his actions that inspired some of the older, more worn out Kage to be better. He was also a lot more understanding than the average Konoha shinobi, most of whom were puppets to their state propaganda or slaves to its nationalistic ideals. Most of the Leaf Ninja were either ignorant of the Leaf's dark past or willingly chose to look past it and contributed to Konoha's crimes and to the overall darkness of the shinobi world. However, Naruto, throughout his journey, came face to face with many of the victims of the shinobi system, and more specifically, the Leaf Village. Pain in particular left a lasting impact on Naruto and was the one that inspired him to try to find an answer to the cycle of hatred. So Naruto gets all the credit for being empathetic enough to acknowledge the perspective of the Leaf's enemies. However, and this is to address the second party's sentiment, Naruto never goes beyond recognizing their pain. Or what I mean by that is, he never gets down to the root cause of evil and darkness within the shinobi system itself. A lot of people believe that Naruto didn't fundamentally change anything. He still praised the Hokage and could never see past the indoctrination of the village. It's almost like he viewed all the atrocities caused by the shinobi system as natural disasters that couldn't be helped, not as political decisions that were executed to benefit a certain group at the cost of others. Nagato's parents didn't just die, they were the casualty of a war started in the Hidden Rain by the Leaf Village. Sasuke's clan didn't just vanish, they were deliberately annihilated by the establishment of Konoha to preserve order. Naruto himself doesn't really challenge the narrative enough to be able to truly reform or change the shinobi system. And I don't even think that it's intentional. I think that he truly can't see past the state propaganda he's been raised on. He lacks the critical thinking skills to do so. He saw the third Hokage as an ideal ruler despite him being the head of the state during the Uchiha massacre, and he barely even comes in contact with the oligarchs or bad state actors of Konoha, Koharu, Homura, and Danzo. Heck, he never even met Danzo. All that he knows about Danzo is what Sai told him, and Sai was raised to be his pawn, so it's doubtful that Sai could objectively describe Danzo. Sai still believed that Danzo was actually looking out for Konoha's best interest most of the time. So not only does Naruto lack the intelligence to challenge the deeply entrenched narratives he was raised on, but the narrative doesn't even make an effort to have him interact with the state's bad actors. And that's part of the reason why people don't believe that Naruto truly achieved peace. Because the real issues that caused most of the conflict are never addressed. The hypocrisy of the village and the elders are never confronted. And worst of all, they get to keep their status quo. Only the antagonists and maybe the Kage or Danzo have to face their flaws. So how could Naruto do better on his promise and actually fix the problems with the Shinobi system? Well, I guess we finally reached that part of the video. The first part that a lot of my subscribers like to point out is the elephant in the room. Naruto has got to deal with the oligarchs of the Leaf, Koharu and Homura, the individuals that were complicit in Danzo's actions, complicit in his best friend Sasuke's clan's annihilation, and in general, despite their role as advisors, they don't really provide any good advice to the leadership of the Leaf. The role is that of the hardliner geezers that just bug the Hokage and criticize any actions that they deem as weak. The worst thing about those two is that they were useful idiots. They were easily swayed by bad actors and made to carry out their agenda. That's how Danzo was able to pull off most of his schemes. And the same thing happens in Boruto. When Kawaki pulled off the identity swapping scandal with Boruto, they were once again just a tool for someone's agenda. They literally never give any good advice that's beneficial to the citizens of the Leaf, despite them being advisors, and they're basically just plot devices. On top of that, they never face any accountability for their role in the Uchiha massacre. That's probably why Sasuke is always away from the village. He's probably so uncomfortable having to deal with these two hags still being in power. And in fact, he was the one treated as a criminal and made to atone for his sins. After his defeat in the Valley of the End, Sasuke is not allowed to bring up his grievances again. And he probably doesn't like to do so because he doesn't want to go back to such a dark and lonely place. However, imagine if he could actually confide in his supposed best friend and tell him what was bothering him. Imagine if Naruto took some advice from Sasuke about the problems that he had with the system and how he could fix them. That would have made for a much more compelling ending in my opinion. Everyone that considered Sasuke to be a criminal did not know about the conspiracy behind the Uchiha clan's demise. And while Danzo was the main perpetrator, he wasn't the only thing wrong with the system. But if Naruto did learn about Koharu and Homura, what would he do? Could he imprison them for their complicity in the village's crimes? Or could he at least force them into retirement? Would some form of justice be served? Well, it's hard to say. Naruto was all about forgiveness, but that was usually to those that he could relate to or empathize with. Koharu and Homura were cold pragmatists. They'll probably defend their collaboration with Danzo as protecting the Leaf and call Naruto a naive fool that doesn't understand the sacrifices and tough decisions they had to make. Though if they are confronted by the Naruto that was the hero of the war, then they may have no moral leg to stand on. In order to fix the system, Naruto would have to ensure that those that exploited or abet in war crimes will face some form of accountability. These two geezers were also a pain to Granny Tsunade, who was close to Naruto, so if she revealed the rules they were trying to enforce on him behind his back, Naruto could make up his mind. I don't think he would kill them, it's not in his nature, but he could and should at least force them to retire. I'm surprised that Kakashi didn't do anything despite knowing that they were scummy, corrupted actors that considered Danzo's methods to be the right move. However, I believe that to dispose of those two, they might have to consult the feudal lord, Which brings me to the second part. If Naruto truly wants to reform the shinobi system, he also must tackle the feudal lords and redefine their hold on the hidden villages. The one thing I don't like about the series is how little we see of the daimyo despite how important they are to the overall structure of the Naruto world. The feudal lords essentially serve as the leaders of the country. The Kage just serve as the leader of the hidden village within that country. So you could view the feudal lord as the president, while the Kage is more like the commander-in-chief of the military stronghold of the land, that being the shinobi village. Despite not being shinobi, the daimyo usually have a lot of sway or influence over the great nations, since they're the ones that fund the shinobi villages. Now, while this isn't inherently a bad thing, this also meant that there was a huge disconnect between the decision makers and the shinobi that served them. The feudal lords were just as problematic as the Kage in the big picture, and their disagreements with each other could lead to major wars breaking out, like when the Land of Wind's feudal lords started outsourcing missions to the Leaf and cutting the Sand's budget to save a couple of bucks and undermine the Kazekage, which led the Sand Village to collaborate with the evil Orochimaru. Or even in the Shikamaru Shinden novel, where the Land of Earth's feudal lord risked having all-out war break out when he coerced the Stone Village to prepare for an offensive against the Land of Flowers that was under the protection of the Land of Lightning, just so that the Earth Daimyo could incorporate some more fertile land to the Land of Earth and increase his profits. The greed or exploitative nature of the feudal lords risked wars all the time, and it was the shinobi that died on their behalf. The Land of Fire's feudal lord wasn't necessarily as bad, but he wasn't that great either. He was the one that AOK'd Danzo to become the 6th Hokage, even if he was hesitant. Someone that holds such an important role can't afford to be indecisive. So while I'm not suggesting that Naruto gets rid of the feudal lord system, what I am proposing instead is that he meets and familiarizes himself more with them, considering how important the feudal lord is. Now in Boruto, Naruto does seem to have a better connection to the new fire daimyo, so that's good. The Kage should in general have a strong pipeline set up between them and the feudal lord, like an ambassador or something. I believe that was Koharu and Hamura's role, and that's why they were still in power, but frankly, given all of their decisions, I think the connection to Danzo should be legitimate grounds for dismissal. And now, for the third part. Another thing that Naruto and the new generation can try to implement to guarantee some sort of global order is a body or council within each land, kinda like a supreme court of sorts, independent of the Kage and the daimyo that oversee their actions and could rein in any leader that's acting too tyrannically. If such a thing was already set up, then the scandal with the 4th Mizukage would have never gone on for as long as it did. This council could abide by some written legal shinobi code with some basic humanitarian principles that at the very least keep the Kage or the daimyo bound by some rules or limitations. Basically something that'll hold future leaders accountable for their actions. That's the only way to make sure that no bad actor comes into power after Naruto and returns the shinobi world to the hell on earth it once was. And this council doesn't have to be restricted to prosecuting only the Kage. The Kage's aides or any other senior members should be bound by those rules. If such a system was around during Danzo's time, then he wouldn't have been able to get away with as many war crimes as he originally did. There could be 2 different court systems implemented as well, one being the local council or jury within each country, and then there could be a grand jury for the Shinobi Union that handles international affairs, meaning that if there were any incidents involving different lands or different hidden nations, and they wanted to solve this conflict diplomatically, then they could visit the Shinobi Union Council. It could be located in the Land of Iron, the same land that hosted the Kage Summit, since it was neutral. This body could be established with the goal of holding everyone to account and preventing the great nations from absolutely dominating and destroying the minor villages. The reason that Pain and Sasuke turned to such drastic moves and ideologies was because there was no system that could deliver justice to them, so they had to take matters into their own hands. Now, of course, this level of political planning may be outside Naruto's scope, but if he were truly committed to change, then he should have done more to change the shinobi system, because as it stands, the system is still the same. The one thing that Naruto changed was the attitude of shinobi. and you can't rely on the kindness of everyone to maintain order. If another bad actor rose, he'd be able to exploit the system just like the historical bad actors. Naruto does lack the book smarts to come up with such a code, but maybe if he worked alongside Kakashi, Sasuke, and Shikamaru, they could come up with some blueprint of a model. The one major issue with this idea is that if international law or bodies like the UN can't rein in countries in the real world, then what's there to guarantee that Shinobi or future Kage would abide by these laws? The second a Kage is too powerful to be controlled, they can behave as tyrannically as they want. This body will need Naruto and Sasuke as the enforcers of this legal code. All of these changes would go in line with Naruto's principles. It's not like he wouldn't want to create a system for accountability. He's just not politically savvy like that and is idealistic enough to bank on the kindness of those that he changed. Another change that Naruto could implement, which is simple enough, is just raise the age of the Shinobi graduation. The reason the Shinobi system and the hidden villages were created originally was so that children weren't thrown into life and death scenarios in the battlefield. But then the academy and the Chunin exams were created so that children prepared to be sent on the front lines of war again. In more extreme cases like the Hidden Mist, the children were made to fight each other to the death and the survivors would become Chunin. Now obviously the current Chunin exams during Naruto's Hokage reign are nowhere near as brutal as the Blood Mist or even as the Chunin exams that Naruto and Sasuke took, but they're still sending children onto the battlefield. Hashirama himself, the founder of the Leaf, used the fact that children were now able to grow old enough to be able to taste alcohol as a measure of how successful the village was. So why not implement a law that only those that have become old enough to drink could experience war? The children in the academy could still spend their time training to become ninja, but they just shouldn't be deployed to wars at such a young age, at least alone. That's how you prevent cases like Rin or Obito from occurring again. It's clear that children don't have the mental capacity to handle something as hellish as war. Now, of course, there aren't as many wars in the Boruto era, and I'm sure that Naruto isn't sending kids to die in wars like in the past, but maybe that age limit should be formally outlined. Other than that, I suppose this is one of the improvements that took place since Naruto took reins. Plus, if we look at the Sakura Hiden novel, it was stated that she opened up a mental health clinic for war orphans to help children stricken with PTSD, so that's already a step in the right direction. And now, one last and final measure, which is an idea inspired by one of my subscribers named Zara. So shout out to her for the suggestion. But what if instead of having an authoritarian Kage that did all of the decision making for the village, instead you had a council of elected representatives for the Kage that took care of the political and economic aspects of running the village? The idea behind this would be that the most powerful shinobi in the village is not necessarily the most well equipped to run it. The Hokage could still exist as the symbolic leader and the head military advisor, but not a political ruler with complete authority. Now, I know that the Kage already have their aides and advisors, but all I'm saying is that the framework could be more well defined. Naruto, despite being strong and well-intentioned, is not necessarily the most cut out to be a political leader. That's why it takes him so much more time to finish his paperwork, which results in him spending all of his time in the Hokage office and having a strained relationship with his family. He also relies a lot on Shikamaru to handle the political and diplomatic side of running the village. Naruto looked up to the third Hokage's style of ruling the village. He followed in his footsteps and saw everyone in the village as a part of his family, and that's why he personally adopted Kawaki into the Uzumaki fam. So you could say that he had the same naive idealism as Hiruzen, exemplified when Kawaki sealed both him and Hinata and then went after his son. So you see what I mean by the system hasn't been changed broadly. Maybe that's why a lot of people compare Shikamaru to Danzo as the more pragmatic one that had to keep the Hokage's ideals in check. Of course, Shikamaru is nowhere near as monstrous and unethical as Danzo. I believe that Kakashi as Hokage did take some big steps and tried to change the economy of the shinobi world by having it be more business driven than war driven, though it seems like the fundamentals of the system remained the same. And you know, those have been some ways or strategies I could think of that Naruto could change or fix the shinobi system. some of which have already been halfway implemented, but just need to be more rigidly defined. Naruto himself is not a bad Hokage per se, but he's simply too apolitical or centrist to come up with real change, or to even know how to change the system or what needs to be changed. Kakashi arguably brought a lot more change to the village than Naruto did. Sakura's mental health clinic was also a much needed change. And Sasuke protecting the village from the shadows has brought a lot of peace and stability to the village. I guess Naruto's thing was all about working with each other to achieve one's goal. Of course, the biggest issue with the change he brought was that it mostly relied on the people running it. The system itself was still fundamentally flawed. And if a corrupt actor came to rise like Danzo, he could theoretically abuse the system to the same extent as in the past. And even the changes that I proposed aren't perfect or foolproof. They're just some ideas on how to hold accountability, but realistically, if the UN barely works in our real world, then it's quite a stretch to think that this framework would restrict Shinobi from acting out. Those that hold the power dictate what happens, and that's how it's always been. Things are just working out for Naruto and Sasuke because they're the two most powerful beings, and because they've both been victims of the system, and that made them more well-intentioned and more willing to enforce peace. But the second a more powerful, ill-intentioned being comes to power, the system will fall. Kinda like Jigen or something. So Naruto didn't really change the system much, but one could argue that even had he did, it wouldn't make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Like Spammy the Hedgehog said, the words shinobi and peace don't mix. Heck, I'd go as far as saying that humanity and peaceful coexistence don't mix. Now, I wanted to give another shout out to Zara for her ideas. And if you guys want, leave the video ideas you'd want to see the most in the comments, and I'll make the most liked one for the next video. I want to encourage more interactions here in the comments section, as it's you guys that make the channel and keep the Naruto community alive. But anyways, this has been it. I'll see you guys in the next video, and peace out.